Crypto moves fast. New tokens, new narratives, new promises every week. But how much of it actually makes life easier for users? I'm Lianna Adams, and today I'm joined by Colin Goltra, CEO of Morph, to talk about what real utility in crypto looks like beyond the hype, beyond the chaos. Welcome, Colin.
Liana, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Maybe to start, can you tell us a little bit more of your background and how you found your way into crypto?
Yeah, absolutely. I started my career in traditional finance, which for a long time was actually not something that I found very useful, right? I started in investment banking and then did sort of corporate development, doing M&A for Samsung, and started my career in San Francisco. Very optimistic time for technology, kind of the early unicorn era. And I fell down the rabbit hole very quickly with the Bitcoin community in San Francisco. This was circa 2013, 2014, and it was very nascent days of the ecosystem. And it had this very I describe it fondly, but it was cult-like energy, right? It was very it was very imbued with a lot of vision, right? And so I really sort of I fell down the rabbit hole in a very meaningful way. I think a lot of people have that same similar experience in crypto where they suddenly kind of catch the bug and really dive deeply. And so that happened for me circa 2013, 2014, and eventually decided to leave my job in sort of traditional finance and tech and really go all the way in to crypto. And so I moved from the US to the Philippines, a one-way ticket, and joined an early stage team called Coins.ph, which was building originally the vision was crypto-based remittances, Bitcoin-based remittances, and eventually ended up focusing on, sort of holistically crypto and payments for Southeast Asia. Uh, After that, I went to Binance, was there at a very formative period of growth, leading Southeast Asia, and then spent time at Yield Guild during the Web3 gaming era, and now I've found myself to Morph, building infrastructure for the crypto ecosystem, and so have been in crypto for a long time. I've seen kind of multiple very notable periods of adoption, and I don't think I've ever been more excited than I am now for the way things are going.
Yeah, I really love your journey, and I totally get you. It was that feeling that was really palpable, right? Around crypto. Yeah, I totally get what you mean. And you have seen multiple market cycles, right? How have the core narratives around crypto evolved over time?
Yeah. I think every cycle is very narrative driven. Obviously, I think when I first started, it was extremely idealistic in a way that was a lot of fun. I mean, it was it really was those early sort of libertarian ethos. Some of the early meetups had anarchist types, and one time I met a prepper, and the
They were going to
prepper
change
was
the
trying to.
world.
Yeah, exactly. There it was. The prepper was literally in a trench coat and trying to buy bitcoins. And so those early days, I think it was really about a reaction to, let's say, institutional financial power. And over time, it has gotten it's taken on many different other meanings. And so I think much of the more recent waves have been very speculatively driven, and that I think certainly has its place. I think there's an exciting energy to that, and I think now we are, during those prior speculative eras, there was always this this looming, kind of this looming prospect that institutions would come and adopt crypto, and I think people would think that would pump their bags. And I do think this past cycle, the past couple cycles here, the institutions are finally here. And I think we're seeing enterprises, take a very clear interest in blockchain and stablecoin payments. We've certainly seen enterprises adopt, the tier one and blue chip crypto assets across their markets. And so, I think this cycle is probably most notable for that institutional adoption.
Yeah, and I think, we have seen a lot of evolution, right, in this space. And, I wanted to ask, like, where do you see the most genuine utility in crypto today?
Yeah, I think I do think that the breakout product of our ecosystem has really clearly been the stablecoin, right? Maybe two. I think maybe if you would have asked some people this question maybe 18 months ago, they would have said Bitcoin. Obviously, I remain a big fan and supporter of Bitcoin. But I do think the thing that people are really discovering and especially implementing in their own businesses is stable coins, right? And I think uh, this is a great entry point for a lot of business people, a lot of corporations, a lot of leaders in the business world. And so, yeah, I think we're really in the midst right now of a stablecoin moment.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I love that you said that. So let's go under the hood a little bit, right? So when businesses and institutions look at on-chain systems today, what are they actually looking for?
Well, I think in many ways they're not looking for on-chain systems, right? I think that they are, despite many of us, maybe starting in crypto from sort of this deep point of, ideology or belief or some sort of point of excitement. I actually think the ecosystem today, at least as it relates to things like payments and stablecoins, is extremely practical, pragmatic, right? Businesses are not here on chain because they're excited about the vision of Satoshi or what have you. Even if that is once sort of is an important part of the history, businesses are here because it's actually become the best solution for the job, right? And so the ability to access global financial infrastructure, the fact that it doesn't have it doesn't close with banking hours. It's 24/7. It's global. It's really robustly accessible anywhere in the world. These are things that are highly attractive to institutions. I mean, I think that is the best marketing as it relates as it relates to institutional adoption. Is just how much easier it is to use, a standard stablecoin flow versus, maybe the analog in the fiat system.
Yeah, so I suppose, it's more on the practical side and not the philosophical narratives, right, that they're going to be
Yeah,
interested in. And speaking of
totally.
stable coins, stable coins are now central to many serious discussions in the industry, right? So why do you think they've become so important at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, it's an increase, despite any one news cycle, the direction of globalization is really over a long enough period of time, really going in one direction, right? I think the dependence, the interconnectedness of the global economy, regardless of the political situation at any given point, is just inevitably hyper connected in the digital and internet world, right? And so, I think in many ways, national or region, national banking systems inevitably are going to look very provincial over the course of time, right? I think information and information and news, communication, everything is hyper global, hyper digital, and so I do think that it's inevitable that finance would have that same moment, and so I think the ability to send payments through stablecoins in a permissionless way is a key part of that vision, right? I think it's finance becoming globalized and digitized the same way everything else in the world has, right? And so for us, yeah, I think there is this inevitability to stablecoins for sure.
Yeah, and just touching on like payments. So payments has long been seen as one of crypto's biggest opportunities. So why has it been so difficult for the industry to fully unlock?
So I do joke with my team sometimes that payments is like one of, if not the largest white whales of the crypto ecosystem. So uh, for people that have been in the industry for, a decade plus, there was a period where there was almost like this short list of uh, original sort of blockchain applications. There was a period of crypto called blockchain, not Bitcoin, right? Where they were less interested in maybe the crypto as an asset class, but more as a technology layer, right? And they would always describe a set of use cases. Some were like medical records, supply chain. There was several different sort of categories where they felt this would be really critical. And the top of that list was almost always universally payments, international remittances,
Hmm.
international flows of funds that could benefit from global financial infrastructure or global information infrastructure. And so certainly it's always been one of the great sort of markets that a lot of crypto entrepreneurs have been very interested in. And I think in prior iteration, and when I first started in crypto, I joined a startup in the Philippines that was very focused on remittances, right? Bitcoin-based remittances. And the learnings we had from that were, well, Bitcoin is useful and global, but it's a little slow. Back then, the fees were very high, were sort of deceptively high, right? And so Bitcoin's great to transfer $100,000. It's not that great actually at transferring $10, even today, right? And so, Bitcoin became a bit slow. And then we had Ethereum, and Ethereum very quickly became high demand, and then the fees rose, right? And so we've had kind of this path, in one sort of trail here, we've had this series of technology that could solve the problem, but maybe the fees and performance didn't scale. And then in the other, I think crypto's been in this kind of regulatory gray area, or there's this lack of regulatory clarity for crypto. And I think on both of these fronts in the past, let's say 18 months, we've emerged from that ecosystem, from these conditions in a big way, right? I think on-chain scaling and expenses have become very manageable. We have very high performant blockchains now that can really transmit information at very small costs. And now we have, I think, much more regulatory clarity around the world with stable coins and with certain categories of digital assets as well. And so it's kind of this perfect confluence where it's taken a long time, but I do think the ecosystem is finally ready to kind of capture one of its white whales here.
Yeah, I really love how you've explained it. And, I used to say to people as well that we're still building the plane while flying it, right? And we have been in crypto for about a minute. What do you think has historically held crypto back from reaching the level of adoption many expected?
Yeah, I do think so. I think I occupy an interesting vantage point here, which is, I've spent pretty meaningful time, I'd say, in the US, in Europe, and across Southeast Asia. And I think that each region would answer this question very differently, right? I think the European would
Mhm.
say, well, no one's ever going to adopt crypto. I think the American would say, crypto's interesting, but maybe not for me, right? And then I think the Southeast Asian person would say, "Oh, we have we've adopted crypto already, right?" Like I think I do think in my time working, with teams in the Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, people have a good sense of, if you want to have access to dollars, you can get USDT. If you want to find interesting sort of opportunities on the internet, a lot of times that will interact with crypto and blockchain technology. And so I do think adoption is relative to maybe the set of alternatives. And so in places like Europe or the US, where there's pretty high quality alternatives, or the legacy financial system works quite well. Yeah, I think uh, there's a lack of belief or a lack of need there. And I do think in certain economies where maybe the legacy fiat system has high inflation, or there's high fees to use the financial system. I think stablecoins, various crypto projects have already taken quite well there. And so I do think it's dependent on, who you're asking in a big way.
Yeah, who you're asking and where they're from and what's their need, right? As well. Yeah, I really love that answer. For individuals or businesses who are crypto curious but cautious, what's the most sensible way to engage with the space today, you think?
Yeah, I do think it's easier now than ever, even in the places where,
Hmm.
even in the places where maybe it's there's good alternatives like Europe or the US. Um, I'm never one to sort of encourage someone to trade if that's not what they're willing to do. Certainly, that's the entry point for a lot of people is they get, they look at an exchange, they research assets. But I think one great way to start is if you're going to travel somewhere, right? I think you need to think about how your currency is going to go internationally, right? Maybe that's a great use case for stablecoins, right? Maybe there's a way to off ramp in the country you're traveling to, these sorts of things. Another way is maybe someone needs. Non-speculatively, maybe not someone needs US dollars or euros or Swiss francs, right? And there's a high quality fiat currency that they can kind of diversify their local currency out of, right? That's a very easy use case for crypto. And so yeah, there's a lot of entry points. I do think most people start with semi-speculative use cases. I always want to hesitate to give that answer in a podcast, but that's a
Suppose.
well a tried and true path as well. But yeah, I do think payments over time is going to be an easy way for people. But the thing is, I think it won't be people that are crypto curious that will start through payments. It'll just be institutions and startups and businesses adopting stablecoins, and the user won't really know that they're using stablecoins. Their transactions will just become a bit cheaper and faster.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose like what you were saying just now is kind of like finding the why, right? Like why do you want to um be in the space, and why do you maybe need to use crypto perhaps, right? But yeah, I really love your answer. Just looking ahead, like how would you describe what meaningful crypto adoption or success could look like over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah. So something I've noticed is if you've been in the space long enough, there's a point at which you are no, at which the crypto space becomes just far too large, right? Like far too large for any one person to really have a full map of. I think when
Mm.
in 2013 and 2014, it was Bitcoin and a couple altcoins that were of dubious quality. And, it was very easy to track the ecosystem. You could do it, maybe in a single blog post, right? And then over time, there's been more and more ecosystems with with a wider and wider proliferation of things it's going to tackle. And I think an obvious indicator of success will be we won't talk about the crypto ecosystem, right? I don't think anyone talks about the .com ecosystem anymore or the mobile. It's just part of the firmament of technology, right? Once upon a time, people that were very interested in mobile were broadly aware of all the apps that were notable startups or businesses. And in the same way, I think we're right at that point with crypto, right? Someone that's deep in the rabbit hole for Bitcoin will know nothing about Ethereum and will know nothing about Solana, and they'll know a certain set of stablecoins versus other ones. And so I do think we're kind of at that point already. And I think over time it will be people won't really define themselves by, hey, I work in crypto. It will be, I work at a payments company. Oh, what does your payments company do? Well, we have, the stablecoin, we built a payment application and it happens to use stablecoins, but that's not really the defining feature of it, right? And so we do want to get to this point where the crypto kind of melts away, right? And people are using it. Hopefully it's great for, the protocol, the decentralized protocols that operate a lot of these things. But yeah, we do want kind of the crypto moniker to melt away and focus on, kind of what's solving problems in the world.
Yeah, so in a way, what you're saying is like crypto won't even be mentioned, but it's understood that it is crypto, right? So it's yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Um yeah, that's really interesting though, because it feels very cyclical as well, right? In how you've described things. So yeah, I wanted to ask, what needs to happen at the infrastructure or industry level for that future to materialize?
Well, I do think we're at a very good trajectory right now. With the Genius Act passing last year, and I think governments around the world, and actually not just governments, but traditional financial institutions, really warming to crypto, at least as a technology, if not also as an asset class. I do think that I feel much more comfortable in this answer today, in February 2026 than I would have answered maybe 18 to 24 months ago. So I do think things are moving quite nicely. I think there are still I think there are still very clear problems to solve at the level of performance, interoperability. But for the most part, the ecosystem seems to be rowing in the right direction. I do think most projects are becoming broadly interoperable. And I think it allows protocols to be a little bit more customer service oriented, right? We can work directly with businesses to make sure they're using the right solutions, improve accordingly, and it's much more partner oriented, which I think is great. And that's definitely our approach as well.
Yeah, I almost feel like someone going into on stage and saying, I have arrived. Does it feel like that for you with crypto
A little
adoption?
bit, yeah. Certainly, if you certainly, and it's well, it's funny, like the people you start with are sometimes not it's kind of like it's like kind of being in like a TV show or something, and we're in
Mhm.
season 11 or something, and the cast is like super different. There's a couple characters from the original cast, and a lot of them have moved, a lot of those actors have moved on, and there's a lot of new ones. And so it's like yeah, the soap opera of crypto is has taken on new casts many different times over the era, but it's all been one show.
Yeah, I love that. Final question before we wrap. What's a skill or way of thinking you believe will become far more valuable in the future?
Yeah. So I think fundamentally, like, people should, well, maybe reevaluate how they think about careers, right? And I think there's much to be said
Mm,
about this in terms of, I do think that there's going to be this thing where uh people will become, obviously in the era of AI, but not just AI, actually, it's the internet economy, right? I think it's
yeah.
the um it's the ability to have even the most obscure skill really become valuable at internet scale. Like, a weird example of this is if you go on like Instagram Reels or something, there are people that like mow lawns in like or they'll do it for free to where there's a really messy lawn in their community, and they'll like mow it in a very aesthetically pleasing way, and they'll do like a time lapse, right? And that becomes content, and they give the lawn mowing for free, but it because they're going to monetize that on a TikTok or a YouTube or whatever at like 1,000, 100x the cost of what the lawn
Mm,
mowing would have been, right? And so I think uh, at internet scale, you can kind of be yourself for a living, right? And so uh, people, I think hyper authenticity, curation, these things are going to trade at such a premium. And it's a bit of a cliche to say curation, authenticity, and stuff, but these things will trade at such a premium when you can use AI for things, when you can use AI for things, when you can put it at global distribution. Those are the careers that are going to be so weird, but the most lucrative. And so if you can do something that you are uniquely good at, or on a very short list of people, and you're like the intersection between a few different very niche topics, you will find at internet scale, you will find an audience for that thing, right? And so, yeah, I do think, we're trying to build infrastructure for that sort of fundamentally internet native economy. But yeah, I do think that like weird, unique, singular people will have so much leverage in the future, will continue to have increasing leverage in the future, that that's probably the most interesting set of
yeah.
values to have. Yeah,
And I suppose it's also just being open and having a different perspective on values, right? Like what is valuable, what is considered yeah, valuable to a person. Because I think, with AI and also with like, and crypto's doing that already. It's making us or it's pushing us to reimagine how we exist in this world, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Thank you so much for helping us separate signal from noise. If crypto is going to matter long term, it won't be because it's loud, it'll be because it's useful. And that's the standard the industry needs to build toward.